Welcome to the Tom Castro Shooting Academy podcast. You have now entered the next level. All right. I have a special guest. Welcome to the Tom Castro Shooting Academy Next Level podcast. I have Mr. Nils Jonasson. I'm pretty sure it's safe to say I have the national champion with me after the year that he had in 2022. He absolutely crushed it. Welcome, Nils. How you doing, brother?
You know, Tom, I am doing absolutely awesome. Thanks for having me on.
I think you had an okay year, man.
So I've had years that are close to this, but this definitely takes the cake for the most national championships won, the most major events won by myself.
Right.
So yeah, this year was really solid for me.
And you didn't have any easy national championships. Everything was like nail biters, dude, like quarter of a point, if you slipped on a rock, if a dust flew in the air, I mean, it could have went either way in quite a few of your matches this year.
Yeah, for sure. And with the different nationals I've shot, most people don't factor in some of the challenges associated with, hopping divisions. Like carry optics is so much different than limited or production. And just what goes into like getting ready and preparing and like the trials and tribulations that go into all that kind of stuff. Like people really don't get it. But I can tell you that the most prestigious match that I won this year isn't the match I'm most proud of.
Really?
Yeah.
So which match is that?
So I would argue that the most prestigious match I won this year was Carry Optics Nationals. The level of competition, the number of grandmasters, the fact that there were 10 people that shot the match that could have legitimately won the whole thing. That's not something that's very common. Usually 1, 2, maybe 3 guys duking it out. There were 10 plus people that had a shot at winning Carry Optics Nationals. So just from the sheer level of competition, that was the most prestigious win for me this year. What meant the most to me was limited nationals. I've been trying for the last 3 years to win this match shooting at Canik in minor. And let me tell you what, I think I won it this year for the first time ever, mind you, by 0.01% or something like that. It was ridiculously close. So that I'm the most proud of the limited nationals win for sure.
Unfortunately, I think that's the one you're most known for. That's the one you're known most for as well. I don't want to say unfortunately, because all those other ones were huge accomplishments, but that was the one that I was like, oh, I'm pretty sure he cemented himself as the man at this point now. Like, I think everyone realizes, well, anybody who is real competitive in this sport, they understand the minor versus major dilemma. When you're shooting against somebody shooting major, obviously when you're shooting major, you have different recoil impulses, but man, it's not that much different. If you know how to hold the gun properly, you're going to shoot pretty darn fast as a guy with a 9mm. So where would you say the biggest disadvantage is in that aspect of that match with the limited minor versus major, other than just the power factor? Did you have an advantage because you had more rounds than they did? Less? I mean, were you able to be a little more aggressive? Did you feel like your recoil management helped a little more because you were able to shoot maybe a little faster? Where do you feel like, I know that you barely won, so I don't know if I want to say there's an advantage there, but you won. So was there anything there that kind of maybe gave you the edge in that by just having minor? Or was it all negative?
I think the experience of me trying to do it for the last 2 years and finally on the 3rd year, like coming in more prepared, more aware of what the disadvantages were and how to cope with them. Because in years past, like I've been able to hang with these guys and I've podiumed the last 3 years at limited nationals. Can't remember if I'm 3rd, 2nd, now 1st, or 2nd, 1st, or how that exactly worked out. But the last couple of years, I've lost a ton of points in certain areas where this year I was able to mitigate that point loss and kind of hang with everybody a little bit closer. And that's more like on the larger field course stages where the target distances is stretched out. The hit factors aren't super low, so the points, in theory, aren't that important. But when I drop 10 Charlies and the next fastest guy drops 15, right, I'm still 5 points further back than they were. Right. And even if I shot a half second faster, it doesn't matter. So on stages like that, just mitigating that disadvantage from the minor, I think helped probably the most.
In the 3 matches that you've shot, the three in a row here, do you feel like this match versus any other match gave you a more opportunity to win this year? Like, in other words, did the other 2 years?
This was probably the hardest one to do it in.
Yeah. So you're just stacking up the difficulty, aren't you?
Well, and I say that because this match had a lot of like larger field courses, lots of like swingers at distance. So the opportunity to drop a ton of points was there.
Yeah.
Where, I mean, obviously that's the case in other matches too, but I feel like there were a lot more difficult distance shots at this limited nationals than there have been in years past.
Yeah. Well, we shot it with open too, correct? If I remember correctly. So that was, yeah. So that also doesn't help limited as much because they're going to stretch it out a little bit farther because of the red dots on the open guns. But
well, it was funny because it was a back-to-back format, and the next match was production paired with PCC, which made all the sense in the world.
Yeah, I think they helped the PCC guys a little bit on that one because they didn't really stretch it out very much.
It was an easier match when they finished the changeover for production, for sure.
Which I was surprised that it was easier. I figured that, I mean, obviously you're not going to do a bunch of 50-yarders out there with guys with iron sights, but you also expected it to be, I think they only had one stage with long shots. Everything else, I don't even remember seeing a lot of 20s or 25s. It was just one stage with the metal behind the targets. That was 35 yards. There was a couple there, but other than that, that was it. I don't remember really seeing a lot of long shots. So it was,
so the big thing they changed from my perspective was the fundamental stages, like the standard style where it's like strong hand, weak hand type stuff. The shooting challenge on those stages for the second match was a lot more lenient for people that made mistakes here or there. Where before, like if you did a little thing wrong, like it was a massive point drop. So I think that was probably the biggest difference between the two matches.
Yeah. All right. Well, so I mean, I'm glad we jumped right into it. So let me go through a couple of the things that he accomplished this year, just in case you don't know who this man is. So, because if you're anything like I was when I first started, I didn't know anybody who was good. So I learned as I was getting my butt kicked, and I still am by these guys. I start to learn who's good and who's not. So some of his accomplishments this year alone, I want you guys to all realize this is 1 year that he's accomplished this. Okay. All of 2022. So he wins single stack nationals. Yes, he does shoot other things, but a Canik, even though he loves his Canik. I know it because I love mine as well. He was first in IDPA carry optics, first in production nationals, first in carry optics nationals, first in limited shooting minor. Always make sure you say that. Limited nationals, first at area 5. And I know that one personally because that one hurt. That was a
tough match. That was one of the more difficult matches this year. Is crazy.
I think that was the toughest match I've ever shot, and it was a big learning lesson for me. I learned how to shoot majors at that match, not because of how difficult. I learned how to manage matches, right? So we had a long talk after that. We talked a long time after that match, and then I talked to you at nationals right after that. And we had quite a few talks about a lot of things. So if anybody knows, I go to Nils quite a bit after matches and try to get some tips, not even shooting, just right here in the head. So, these guys all have been shooting a lot longer than me. So I go to the guys that I know they got their shit together in their brain, and I go talk to them and try to get some tips on how to manage matches. And area 5 was a big one for me because it was a difficult match, but I was winning at the first day by quite a few points. And I lost by quite a few points on day 2. And Nils just happened to be the guy who put a butt whooping on me. And he was coming to the last stage of the day, which I was super excited. Not that I ever want to see anybody mess up, but I'm like, I got a chance. This happened to be on the 25-yard one-handed shooting with hardcover. And it was a Virginia count stage. Yeah, Nils really screwed it up. He won the stage high overall, murders everybody with the match on the line. Yeah, that'll just kind of tell you how it is to shoot against Nils. But so first in carry optics, area 5, and then third place standard in the world shoot. I want you to understand something. The world shoot is after he has a year of traveling and going everywhere, and he still takes third place at world shoot, even though he doesn't want to hear about that third place. That is still a hell of an accomplishment. So that's kind of how we are as shooters, though. Dude, that's a hell of a year, bro. Like there's people that don't even have that as their entire career in this sport.
No, I was very happy with how last year went. And at the world shoot, I got to hand it to those Filipino kids. They both shot with their pants on fire. They connected more often than they didn't. They both shot phenomenally well. And with the amount of preparation I was able to put into standard division, I was happy to come away with third place.
Do you think, so I hear this quite a bit, and I don't agree. So I'm interested in see what you think. Do you think you have to shoot IDPA different than you shoot USPSA? I mean, it's all alphas.
100%,
right?
100%
Yeah, you have to shoot it
correct.
different.
Absolutely.
Okay. Can you explain to me why? Because you have obviously a lot more experience, obviously going to world shoot and shooting all these nationals. So
yeah, so think of it this way: every time you drop a Charlie shooting minor in USPSA, you drop 2 points, right? So how much that hurts you depends on the hit factor of the stage.
right.
If it's a 10 hit factor, that mathematically works out to 0.2 of a second, right? As the hit factor decreases, the cost of that Charlie increases. IDPA is the equivalent of a 2 hit factor stage, meaning every single shot you fire outside of the A zone, or in their case, the 0 down, it's a second added to your time. So you can stand around, twiddle your thumbs, aim, press the trigger, grip the gun, breathe, think, like, sing Kumbaya a lot in 1 second for every single point you drop. So yes, you have to approach it differently. Visual patience is a huge deal in IDPA, at least for me. And then another thing IDPA's got going against it for people that like to go really fast, push boundaries and that kind of thing, it's time plus. So everything. So if you shoot stage 1 in 10 seconds, you shoot stage 3 in 10 seconds, you have 20 seconds, right? In USPSA, if you crush a stage, great. You put 5 points on the last guy. If you 0 the stage, you can only lose the number of points that are available in that stage. So if it's a 60-point stage, you lost 60 points. And the matches are generally between 1,500 and 2,000 points for a nationals, right? In IDPA, if your gun doesn't work, or you bomb a stage, or you have a bunch of misses or something, and you turn a 10-second run into a 50-second run, now you're 40 seconds back. You're not making up 40 seconds. It doesn't matter. Unless everybody else does the same thing, there's no way you can do it. So it's very much a game of shooting within yourself, shooting, I don't want to say super controlled, but shooting good enough to hit the target where you want to all the time. Right. It's you shooting the best you can. Like, let everybody else do their own thing. Let them shoot super fast and drop points. That's fine. Your job is to shoot the middle of the target.
Do you change the way you shoot IPSC compared to USPSA?
It kind of depends on the stage. It's hit factor scoring. So a very high hit factor stage, points matter less. I think generally IPSC hit factors are lower, so the points are more important. So in a way.
Do you play the numbers a lot when you shoot matches?
Yeah, I mean, you're aware of it. Right. I have a little stopwatch, so I'll, in my mind, run through the stage and then, hit the stopwatch and figure out what my estimated time would be and what that would associate with to a hit factor. So I have an idea of what my points down would be worth. But, even on a 10 hit factor stage, if you drop a Charlie, that's 0.2 of a second. You do that a couple of times, you're adding seconds to your score.
Yeah.
So it's always better to hit the middle of the target. If you can shoot, way faster than the next guy, yeah, dropping points is fine, but that's not sustainable.
Well, the goal is never the goal is never to drop points. I just hate the old slow down and get your hits thing. And so I'll hear this all the time in all the sports.
Yeah, it's a bunch of BS.
Yeah. It's especially when, score time is part of our scoring, right? Like because I'm going to tell you, if somebody's going to go slow, especially at our level, you're done, right? You got to go, and get hits.
Right.
So you have to do both together. So I hear this slow down and get your hits. And I'm just like, yeah, but it's easier to slow down than it is to get someone to go faster most of the time, especially as much as I coach. So it's like, oh my goodness.
Well, and a lot of times if you consciously slow down, you actually, or at least I become less accurate.
Oh, right? It's worse.
Now you're overthinking things. You're not shooting intuitively or instinctively. Like, you're doing things consciously, which is never as good as doing it, unconsciously or subconsciously. But no, you shoot your sights. If you can shoot as fast as you can see, right? Like, if your sights are on the target, you should have been pressing the trigger. If your dot's on the target, you should be pressing the trigger. And if it's not on the target, you need to recognize that and have the patience to be like, oh, dumbass. Like, maybe you want to put that in the middle the target, or at least on the steel before you pull a miss. But visual patience is a thing. But yeah, I've heard it like time and time again, like you're saying, slow down, get your hits, or slow as
no, don't even say
fast,
it.
something like that.
It's garbage.
Efficient is fast.
Right.
Smooth can be efficient. Smooth can also be really slow and inefficient.
Yeah.
And I know some people that teach, certain aspects of movement or whatever, and like technically, they might be right in some aspects of that, but a lot of times it's taking away from other, it's taking away from the shooting, right? If you're so focused on movement and your shooting suffers, what was the point? If you're so focused on shooting and your movement suffers, it's kind of like a balancing act, right? Like everything.
Yeah, I just made a post about that the other day about how gravity is not your friend. And it's so funny because as soon as like there's topics that pop up in my head, and then all of a sudden, so I swear social media has like a chip in our brains and knows exactly what we're thinking about. And I watch all these videos of guys leaning out and talking about like falling and shooting. And then I'm lucky enough to see that they put it in slow motion and you can watch the gun go bang, bang. And I'm like, you just slowed your shooting down.
Right.
Because you decided to lean out and use gravity. But if you would have just stood and used your power out of your legs and left on the second shot at the proper time, now you control your body and you're going to be more accurate and you're going to shoot faster. It's just kind of interesting. The more I see things, it's like, oh man, like, okay, it's about controlling that stuff. It's about, again, it's about when you leave. It's not just leaving. So like you said, movement, and I'm actually teaching a couple students right now where their movement is dominating their shooting. Like the gun's the last thing they care about. They just care about getting into the spot really fast. And I'm like, it feels good, but it's not scoring points.
Well, when you run into the position, even if you're faster than the other guy, if you run into the position and then you have to pick your gun up, line up your sights, then press your trigger and do it all over again. Like you're a little bit behind the 8 ball on that.
Right. You don't even realize you're slower. So,
right. But I mean, there are times to aggressively move if you can blend a position and without sacrificing either hits or shooting speed, right?
Right.
Like if you can, and sometimes even if you sacrifice a little bit of shooting speed, if you blend a position to where it's basically 1 instead of 2, it could be worth it. But if you're moving just for the sake of moving on and shooting, reevaluate why you're doing it, right? If the point is to have a better score, it may not be the right answer in that scenario.
Right. I've learned that at nationals in the last 2 years. I learned that you move where you need to move. It's not just move constantly. I noticed it's kind of interesting how nationals is a stop and shoot match 99% of the time, but you can go to all these giant area matches, your big level 2s, and everything's like, let's rip, or like not just close, but you can move a lot more. You can be more aggressive. And then they go to nationals. It's like, all right, let's all stop and shoot. I'm like, wait, what happened to all year? It's just kind of different, and I don't think they do it intentionally. I just think it's the way it gets set up, or just kind of falls in that rhythm, I guess. It's just kind of interesting. So I had to learn a very valuable lesson with a couple of ass kickings in the last 2 years at nationals about like, you got to learn to play the game.
Right. And stage design plays a role in that. The IPSC World Shoot this year was very much run to this position and shoot, run to this other position and shoot. And your options for stage breakdown were very, very limited. In fact, of the 3 world shoots I've shot, this is the most limiting nationals from a stage planning standpoint, or the most limiting world shoot from a stage planning standpoint. Like there were very, very few options.
Was this one of the more difficult world shoots that you shot? It was a lot of crazy movers, but I mean, they're kind of known for that, aren't they, as world shoots in general?
Yeah, I didn't really think so. I thought the shot difficulty in France was a lot harder than in Thailand this last month. And they had some challenging swingers and plates and things like that, but I think France was harder.
Yeah.
And France gave you more options, right? Like you could break the stage down and shoot the stage based on your strengths and weaknesses, rather than, all right, turn off your brain, run here, shoot, run there, shoot.
Yeah. So you're at this world shoot, would you have preferred to have a red dot, or I know you love iron sights, so like you're a big iron sight guy, correct? Still, like you really like them.
I think in the last couple of years, I'm changing my opinion on that. I still love iron sights, and that's kind of my background. I think if I was smart, I probably would have switched to production optics, and run the gun I've run all year, shoot that with the Canik. But I qualified for this match 5 years ago, right? And it's been postponed because of COVID and all that kind of stuff. So it was really a question of, do I abandon the US standard team, leave them, a solid shooter short and no chance at winning a team event or podiuming, and pursue like a singles individual medal, or do I stick with what I committed to? And that's what I ended up doing. The red dot is a lot of fun, and that's a whole kind of other conversation. But yes, I enjoy shooting iron sights. That's where I came from.
I'm a big red dot guy, obviously, but I am actually going to be. I just picked up a second Canik. It happens to be a rival because I love the rival. But I had a shooter that comes to our range all the time, and he's like, "Hey, man, I want to get rid of this thing. It's got 100 rounds on it." He did everything that I did to mine, which is almost nothing since the gun comes out of the box great. And I was just like, all right, I'll take it. A couple extra mags. I was just like, I got 400 mags up for the other one. This one will go into that one. And now I have an iron sight. But my big thing was just having a backup in case. Not that the TP9 SFX that I shot for, God, I think it was over a year. That was, it was pointless to have two of those, but I always had two just because in case, but I never broke it. I've been shooting the rival. I probably have close to 10,000 rounds out of it now. And I only had one problem with it. It was, I took a rag and brought it up through the mag well, and I moved the slide release spring. There's like a little bar in there that holds that mag release down, and I never bent it back properly. So I was like getting these random like slide locks, and I'm like, I have bullets. What's going on? And so after once I figured that out and bent it back to where it belonged, because I shouldn't have ran a rag through it like that. I was like, oh, okay, that was it. I've never had an issue with it, so it shoots great. But I mean, that kind of brings me into the next topic I have for you is, I saw the rival in your hand. I mean, I think it was like the day before it came out. And how much of that did you have input on, like with creating the rival? Because it has taken over in many ways, especially carry optics. I mean, sure. I cannot tell you how many people have messaged me to ask me if I'm getting the new steel frame, which we will talk about in a minute after this. But I cannot tell you how many people, are you getting the steel one? Are you getting this? I'm like, wow, everybody must know I shoot a Canik. I mean, I've probably had 20 messages about that steel frame, if I'm getting it or not.
Yeah, that one will be pretty popular. No, as far as my involvement with the rival, that was a couple of years in the R&D process. There was many trips to and from Turkey. Their R&D team in Turkey is an awesome group of guys. The capabilities they've got, the design stuff they can do is interesting. And I remember one instance where we're sitting around kind of a meeting table, and we're talking about designs, changing on the frame, the slide, and all this kind of stuff. And then we go to lunch, and then we come back from lunch, and the R&D team has multiple prototypes of what we discussed an hour and a half earlier on the table for us to evaluate.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so their R&D team at Canik is the best I've ever seen.
Well, you're not, it's probably not cheap to get you there, so they better hustle when you're there.
Well, that's true, but it's a lot easier and faster than getting temporary imports for every for sure. Potential revision on a gun.
Yeah.
But as far as input, I mean, a lot of the frame features, a lot of the slide features, the fact that it's 5 inches instead of 5.2, just so it falls within the IPSC production box or their rules. They have a barrel length limit rather than a box. And the original TP9 SFX was 0.2 inches too long. So we fixed that with the rival. We added the adjustable rear sights for that, but like super aggressive cock concentrations in the slides. So you're not going to slip off the slide, even if hands are wet or something like that. So just a lot of stuff that makes the gun easier to shoot, more comfortable to shoot, and faster. So and if it's easier for me and you to shoot, it's easier for the average guy to shoot. So
I will tell you, the biggest thing that I wanted the rival for was, well, two things about the rival. The trigger. The TP9 SFX had an amazing trigger. Out of the box, it was, obviously there was a lot of slop at the beginning to get rid of, which, that's how it works. They never designed any of these for competition, correct? They just happened to become them.
So the original TP9, I don't think they had any kind of competition aspirations. I'm pretty sure the SFX, the TP9 SFX, the original, had some inspiration in the competition world. But that was
Gotcha.
before I started with Canik.
Okay.
And that gun before the Rival, I mean, was super popular. That was their best-selling gun.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of what got them known in the United States, years ago, is that TP9 SFX.
I almost didn't buy the Rival because I loved the TP9.
I know you do.
I was like, no, dude, I don't need that. I don't need a new gun. My gun runs great. Like I probably have 30, 40,000 rounds in one of those guns, and I have it. I remember talking to you, and actually, I talked to your wife way more than I ever talked to you. I shot with Production Nationals with her.
Yep.
And I was hilarious because we were talking about, I was like, how many people just talk to you to talk to Nils? And she's like, oh, I had somebody come up to me and ask me about ammo, and hey, I want to talk to Nils. And she's like, and I was like, if anybody knows his wife, Jessica, you don't want to go to her to talk to Nils. She is one of the best people I've met in this store. She's so awesome. So I was like, she will let you know what she thinks like that.
Yeah, Jessica's not kidding around. I mean, if you say something dumb, she'll tell you.
Yeah, you're not going to get through Jessica to get Nils and get an ammo or get a gun. But I remember that actually Production Nationals, when I asked you a little bit about how many rounds did you have out of your gun? And there was one gun you had where you were like, yeah, I don't even shoot it in my matches anymore because I have so many, I don't even change the spring. I mean, it had like 50 to 70,000 rounds or something. And you were like, yeah, it runs great. It's just got so many rounds, and I have this newer one. So I just use this but the other one is, I mean, I still runs. And that's been my experience with it as well. And the Rival, honestly, I did like 4 classes in a row and I didn't clean it, which is unusual. I just was so busy, and it was so dirty, and people were like, dude, how disgusting. I mean, you couldn't touch the inside of the mag well. No, it was so gross. I was like, it just runs. Like, I don't want it to be like this, but I'm busy. So it's just, it says a lot about their product, and they make them to be a shooter, right? Some guns you'll see, they're just really pretty. But the improvements that they made on this, how much input did you have on this specific pistol, the Rival?
I had quite a bit of input. Pretty much anywhere you look, I definitely had input on the pistol. I can't take all the credit for it. Right. Yeah, I can't take all the credit for it because, like I said, the R&D team is awesome, and the guys over in Turkey are spot on.
Do they shoot competition?
So in Turkey, the gun laws are pretty barbaric. They can't do what we do here. Okay. The cost equivalent to buy a pistol is probably 10 times whatever it costs us. Goodness. So if the gun costs $500 here, it costs $5,000 there. Like, it's insane. And then they have permits and licensing that they need to renew on an annual basis, and a permit for a firearm would be like $5,000, right? So, and they can only have so much ammunition, and it's bad.
So how do they start up? Why would you ever start a pistol or a firearms company in a country like that? Or, I notice a lot of places like gun companies have factories in some of the worst gun hating states in America. And I'm just like, why? I know they've probably just been there forever and it costs a fortune to move everything, but why? It's just it's interesting how it seems like those are always where you find the manufacturers of firearms, where they're hated.
That is a good question. I know where Canik is located, in Samsun, Turkey. It's kind of known for manufacturing. Okay. So there's a lot of manufacturing, and Canik started out and still is a kind of a brother company to an aerospace manufacturer.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
That might be why they have a good R&D team.
they have a good R&D team for that, but that's also one of the reasons that, their guns are so inexpensive. Yeah. Is because they have the resources to pull from this other company that's much bigger.
That makes sense.
And so their economies of scale are above and beyond what just a regular firearms manufacturer would normally be.
Yeah. I mean, obviously you've been to their factory. I mean, are they just pumping those things out as fast as they can make them at this point?
Pretty much. Yeah. And over the last, several years, they've expanded, manufacturing capabilities. They've increased buildings and things like that. So yes. basically.
So, I mean, that brings me into a question I had well, before I leave that, I want to talk a little bit about the Rival. This is not a Rival podcast, but since we both love this gun, since he made this, I want to talk about his amazing,
so
me.
on your competition gun, are you still running the factory trigger, or are you running one of the Freedom Smith drop-ins?
Factory trigger, bro.
Me too.
It is so good. I don't know why you would touch it. I mean, it is so good. It's funny because I don't get paid by Canik. I actually just had a podcast with Joel Park and Andreas from Practical Shooting Group, and we were talking about pistols, and they were asking me about the divisions, and I said, first of all, carry optics all day. It just makes my blood boil. Like, I just get fired up for it. I love everything about it. I love the equipment, and they were like, well, this and that, and actually I hope I talked him into it, but Andreas had a problem with another manufacturer's firearm, and he just bought a Rival. And I was like, dude, try it. I'm telling you, it's amazing. And he's like, it's really good. And I'm like, you've only been shooting it for about 2 weeks. Wait until you really get that thing in your hand. And it was really cool. And he's an iron sight guy. So it was even better because it was like, look, you've improved with the adjustable sights. And there's a lot of things that you guys did for more of an iron sight division there's a lot of great things. But yeah, the only thing I change on my pistol is the tungsten guide rod, only because I don't like. Canik tends to be a little bit oversprung because of the ammo that they design it for, right? Like they're designed for NATO ammo.
Yeah, you're not wrong.
And unfortunately, and I remember going onto the forums and defending this for over a year, and then I finally just gave up. People were like, "Oh, they don't work," and I'm like, "Dude, they're not designed for us. They're they're not designed for powder puff." So like, if you change that spring, it solves that problem. And they're like, and then once you did, it worked. The magwell difference. The other thing that I change is I put a weighted backstrap on.
Which one do you use? Do you use the lock grip, or do you use the Taylor Freelance?
I use the Taylor Freelance. I believe the one that I bought has the lock grip on it. Okay. So I haven't really had a chance to shoot the new one and see, the difference between the two. I'm actually going to shoot, like, this is gross to me, but I'm going to shoot iron sights this weekend at a classifier match. I'm going to go try to do a GM production run with no practice after 3 weeks. I'm just going to drop the irons in and let's rock and roll. So we're going to see how it goes. But nice. I have one match at the beginning of the year before I can go back to my pistol dream, and I got to shoot some PCC for a little bit for Pan American Games. That was scheduled 4 years ago. That's how long I was supposed to shoot that match, or 3 years ago, whatever it was. It was basically when the World Shoot was supposed to happen. They had one over here in Florida.
Right. And this year it's the Pan American Extreme, I think they're calling it. Yeah. And then last year, right before Nationals, I believe it was the Pan American, just the regular Pan American.
Yeah, Pan American Games or something. I don't know. That's the one. Actually, I saw you there. That's the one you shot. I thought you shot. Did you shoot limited or carry optics that time?
I shot production optics light.
Right. So, which is funny because that's when we actually had that conversation. I was like, "You're going to the World Shoot? Are you shooting carry optics?" You're like, "No." I'm like, "What the hell?" Like, yeah. you had just recently,
as much as I want to.
Optics. Yeah. It was bad timing for that whole match. It was kind of interesting that I thought for sure they were going to suspend that match and just kind of go to the next one.
Yeah, I mean, I'm glad they finally had it. And I'm also glad that they're just going to base their time schedule off of this previous year. So now they're going to go every 3 years, moving forward.
Yeah.
Part of me expected them to, postpone it another year and just roll onto the regular 3-year cycle.
Right.
But it was a pleasant surprise to actually see the match happen.
I will say I'm glad for the guys that earned it, because the guys that earned it 3 years ago, 4 years, whatever the hell, however long it was ago, they earned it. They should have had the opportunity to go do their World Shoot. It's not something you get to do every day. Once you get that spot, you should get to go. It sucks that you did. I mean, I saw a lot of people drop out that earned their spot. I thought that was interesting. I just think timing was it didn't work, so it just kind of how it worked.
I mean, it makes sense. It's an expensive trip. Like, the flights to Asia are not inexpensive.
No,
nothing over there really was that cheap. Hotels, I guess, weren't too bad. Food is cheap, but you also, risk food poisoning and water poisoning and
get eaten by a snake. Oh, that's funny. All right. So I have a question about your sponsorship. So you were talking about how you've been involved with, how long have you been shooting for Canik?
So since early 2019.
So 2019. So going into what, 2 years now? So we're going into 3 years.
This is 2023.
Woo. Okay. Here we go.
That's over 4 years.
4 years. All right. So you got 4 years going into them. How did you get with Canik? I'm interested in how did they come to you? Did you go to them? How did they find you, or did you find them?
Yeah, so they actually had a headhunter kind of do some research and talk to his group of competition shooter friends. And so they reached out to me and they were like, hey, this is kind of what we're looking for. Are you interested in shooting our gun? And my response was, send me one, let me shoot it, let me see if it can work, right? Because if it doesn't work, it doesn't matter how much money you've got.
Right.
Like if I'm at such a disadvantage, there's no way that it's going to be a situation that I'll put myself in. So they sent me a gun and I shot it for 3 months, 3 months, and shot it under the radar. Didn't post any videos, that kind of thing. And then I called him back. I'm like, you know what? This can work. Because the gun shot spot on. The gun was 100% reliable. The trigger out of the box even is money. And you can make it better. The original TP9 SFX, you throw a Freedom Smith trigger in there and you take out all that pre-travel and like the gun can run. So I called him back and I'm like, you know what, let's talk.
Yeah, I probably sold 100 of those triggers because
they do a good job.
They make a good product. I have not tried it in the Rival just because this one was so great. Like the stock trigger is amazing. I haven't even changed the spring. Everyone was like, "Did you change the spring?" I was like, "Dude, it's amazing. It's perfect. Like I don't need to breathe on it to make it go bang. It works great. I can trigger prep it. I can actually be aggressive as hell on the trigger and know that it's not just going to accidentally go off. It really works well." So are you technically an employee of Canik, or you do it like a subcontract kind of thing? I was just very interested in how the sponsorship works for guys like you, because, well, you just won every damn match that you went to almost. So obviously any manufacturer would love to throw their gun in your hand. So how does Canik keep you? Obviously you're a loyal person. That's why you've been with them for 4 years now, but how does that work? Like, do they contract you? Are you working for them now?
Yeah. So since the beginning, I've technically been a contract employee. So, I get a 1099 and all that kind of stuff. And I'm sure everyone's, sponsorship deal, depending on the company, is different. So I can't speak to everyone. So there's a portion of that. There's a certain portion of like performance, like contingency type thing. So if I go in a match and I do well, I'll get some reward from that. But as far as staying with Canik, like I think it's a lot more than just, and this probably sounds cliche, but more of a family environment. Like they don't care, about the wins. They don't care about the money as much, right? Not that that's not important, but like it's a very, they've been very gracious to me. They've, made me part of the family. The owner, Utku, in Turkey is an awesome guy. I get along really well with him and his family. And the US base. So Canik's imported by Century Arms. So the Century Arms people are awesome people to work with, and Canik out of Turkey is top notch. So I think it's more of a family thing in addition to like kind of the monetary side of it.
I mean, you're a great representative of their company. I mean, honestly, you are not, and it has nothing to do with your wins. Like I didn't know you when I first came up to you and asked you about the Canik, and I was struggling with the old factory spring with the TP9 SFX, and I came up to you having never met you, and I was like, actually, I think it's hilarious. I met you and your wife at Chili's, and I could not remember who you were because I'm not a very good fanboy, right?
I remember this.
You remember this? I was like, I don't even remember. I didn't remember anybody's name.
I didn't remember that was you.
That was me. So I walk up to Nils at Chili's and I go, "Hey, it's you." I'm like, I'm retarded. I know, I'm dumb. And his wife, Jessica, which she's just like, who the F is this guy? Right. It's hilarious. So you were gracious enough to help me with my answers. And even though I was an idiot and didn't actually know your name, well, I knew your name and I knew who you were, but I couldn't get it out when it was like meeting my superstar for the first time. And so I don't know, hell, we probably talked standing, waiting for a table for over 30 minutes about, how to fix the gun and everything. It basically just changed the few springs that I needed to change. But the interesting part is the gun ran that entire nationals with that terrible spring setup. I didn't have a single jam, but while I was warming up, I was having jams. I was freaking out. So it was what it was. But I was just like, dude, I can't go. I'm going into nationals here and I don't have a gun that works. I had switched over from the Shadow 2 for the Canik because my Shadow 2 wasn't working. So not that gun's bad. I don't want to say it's a bad gun. It was just like, it was interesting changeover. So, but yeah, I forgot about that story, how I met you at Chili's and I just like, hey, it's you, the Canik guy. That's hilarious. And I remember Jessica's face like, this son of a bitch doesn't even know who you are. And actually the other thing that she said was, oh, I'm just here, I guess, like, because I never talked to her. I just introduced myself to you. I didn't know who she was.
No, I remember that. That was good times.
What are some of the things that you were able to do being with Canik that you wouldn't have been able to without that partnership? Like, what are some of the things that, because of your partnership with Canik, has really changed your life? Like, where have you gone? Things that you would have never done without being with them.
I've definitely seen more of the United States than I would have otherwise. So most area matches, obviously there's a cost associated with traveling to all of the matches I do. So a lot of the area matches like Area 4, Area 7, Area 8, that kind of thing, kind of in the eastern part of the country, I'd normally never shoot those type of matches. So that's one thing Canik's definitely given me the opportunity to do, is pursue some of the regional matches and matches that I wouldn't normally attend. But I mean, this last year I've shot like 24, 25 major championships, and most of those are in the United States. Yeah. And so definitely traveling more in the US. This last year I went to Italy for the IDPA European Championship. So I probably wouldn't have done that without Canik either. That was a heck of an experience. And it was in a little town, Latina, Italy. A little bit north of there is a town called Sermonita. And there's an indoor shooting range that had like a 14, 15 stage IDPA, national championship for the European Championship. And it was awesome. We got to tour a castle, spent a little while in Rome, saw the Colosseum and stuff like that. So that was a fun trip.
Did you bring Jessica on any of those trips?
That was kind of scheduling conflicts with some things. And that was actually right before the world shoot, before Thailand. So I flew back from there, and then 3 or 4 days later, we flew out to Thailand. Yeah. But so it was kind of, bunched up as far as the schedule, but that was a cool opportunity to go to Rome, go to Italy.
So anybody who doesn't know his wife, Jessica, she's also a shooter, a very good shooter, by the way. So I asked if she went, because sometimes she'll go to the matches. Actually, most of the time she goes to the matches, but obviously she has a job. He has a job. So he's a professional shooter. You're a professional shooter, I guess, at this point, right?
Yeah. I guess you could call it that. An unprofessional shooter.
And she obviously is outside of the shooting industry as a career. So it's always interesting to see when you have double cost of travel, double ammo. It always amazes me when husband and wife can keep going to the matches, because you think you're splitting the cost with your significant other, but it's coming out of the same account usually, guys, just so you know. So
yeah, that's very true. Yeah. I wish Jessica could shoot more matches with me. Like this last year, I think she probably only shot maybe 4 or 5. And that's mostly like, regional matches that are close to home, or maybe a nationals here or there. Like she shot limited nationals and open nationals this last year. And, or was it? Limited was paired with open. So she shot open nationals this year in preparation for limited national or limited world shoot in Thailand.
Right.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And then the last minute she switched back to open because there weren't enough ladies to recognize a ladies team for standard. So she switched back to open. So her schedule has kind of been pretty crazy, but I wish she was able to shoot more matches with me than she was.
Yeah. I heard there was some, the world shoot team was falling apart with just participation on some areas, just because I guess people couldn't make it. Again, you have time maybe 4 years ago, you have it all planned out, and then that doesn't work. And then 4 years later, you don't have the same ability to leave or shoot, or job changes. It's just any kind of major change like that's got to be difficult to make it to those matches, I'm sure. I mean, how much did that affect your chances to go? I mean, is there any opportunity that you weren't going to go to the World Shoot because of your schedule, or were you able to squeeze it in there, or did you have it all planned out?
Like I said, it was kind of stacked up against the European IDPA championship. Yeah. So between those two matches, I mean, I'd probably rather shoot the IPSC World Shoot, but that was a really important match for Canik in Italy. We were the title sponsor, and it was super important for us. So I was always planning on attending the World Shoot, regardless of when or where it was. And it happened to work out, so that was nice. Yeah. But I mean, everything's kind of up in the air. People's financial positions change. Sometimes it sucks lighting $5,000 on fire.
That's pretty much what you're doing. Because I mean, even if you win a national championship there, or win a World Shoot, you might as well be a local.
I have a trophy. I have a trophy in the office from my IPSC World Shoot win a couple years ago. And that's all I got.
Yeah, there's no cash checks. There's no cash in the pocket. There's no Cadillacs at the end. You got to love this sport and just plan on never getting your money back. That's for sure.
Yeah. One thing you don't want to do is, write down on a spreadsheet your costs associated with everything, and actually put that together. Pretty sure cocaine would be cheaper.
And it's actually probably
that's not an endorsement of cocaine.
It's probably more useful. You'll probably get more things done. Oh man, that's awesome. Okay, I have another question about Canik's. Does Canik have any major direction? Are they pushing maybe to get more into the practical shooting sports? Are you well, obviously you're leading the way in the practical shooting sports for sure. Like, you are their face of their company for sure. I don't really know. There's no other major sponsored shooter other than you, correct, from them?
That is correct. We have a couple guys that shoot Caniks and wear the jersey. Frank the Tank is one of them. He's a good ambassador for us. We had Jason Bradley until he took a hiatus from practical shooting. Hopefully he gets back into it.
Yeah.
But no, this last year I've kind of been, Team Canik.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they could have picked the worst guy to lead the team. I'm just saying.
I do my best.
You did. You kind of did okay. I mean, you didn't really make the gun look that good, but you did maybe okay a few wins, here and there, like the entire year. Like I said, the national champion. I mean, I was just like, other than open, I think you pretty much won every pistol division this year. I'm surprised they didn't. Do revolver.
I mean, this year I even won 2-gun nationals, the PCC pistol match.
Yeah,
that they put on over in Colorado.
Oh, you did the 2-gun. Mm-hmm. Did you win 2-gun?
I did.
Okay, so that's the one that I was missing. All right, so I knew there was one more. It was the 2-gun that okay. So did you shoot that with irons?
Yes, I shot it in their limited division.
Limited division. So what exactly does that? Because you come from 3-gun, correct? Is that was one of the big things you really used to do, or no?
So I used to shoot a lot more 3-gun than I do. Yeah. That's not where I started. That's not what I love to shoot. Although it's entertaining, it's fun. Definitely challenge associated with multi-gun. I think 2-gun is a lot closer to USPSA pistol than 3-gun is, just because you have the ability to focus on stuff a little bit more, where 3-gun's more just damage control. It's all risk mitigation. It's just like everything's effed up. Like, how do you deal with it the best, right? That's what multi-gun is. 2-gun is closer to USPSA pistol, where you actually refine what you're doing. You do it in the absolute most efficient way because everyone else is too.
Yeah.
2-gun nationals in Colorado was a super fun match. I love their format they had this year.
Yeah, a lot of the times from what I've seen in 3-gun, it's whoever's really good at shotgun, or the shotgun and long distance seems to be like most guys who suck at pistol and 3-gun, they can manage. because most of those targets are semi-close. But when you get into that really long distance, and then the guys who have to reload extra, that's the ones where I'm like, oh, that's the end of that stage.
Yeah, no, if you can shoot, and I come from the tactical 3-gun world, so it's a tube-fed shotgun, usually a Benelli M2, that kind of thing. If you can shoot the shotgun good enough to not miss a bunch, so you don't have to reload it extra, if your reloads don't suck too bad, right, and your shotgun works,
right,
you can get away with the shotgun, like, isn't that big a detriment. For the long range, it really depends on the match. Sometimes long range is more difficult than other matches. And then the pistol, I mean, yeah, everyone can shoot pistol. Maybe you could argue that that's, a less important aspect of 3-gun. But if you crush a pistol stage, or if you can shoot stuff with a pistol that other people have to shoot a rifle with, then you're ahead of the game. So if you're a really good pistol shooter, you open your world up a little bit, and you have more options and more possibilities.
Yeah. All right, I got a couple more questions for you, brother. All right, so I'm really interested in what is your opinion in USPSA versus IPSC versus IDPA? Two different questions there.
Okay.
Which one do you like the most? I'm going to guess it's USPSA, since that's where I've seen you the most. But what do you like? Is there anything that you'd like to see maybe that they kind of bring from IPSC into USPSA, or vice versa, IDPA? Like, is there anything from those that you'd like to bring into your favorite? So what's your favorite first? Let's start with that.
I mean, probably USPSA, just because that's what I shoot the most of. IDPA is fun in its own right, but it's a lot more rule driven. Like, there's a lot more thinking going on in IDPA, and I don't mean that in a good way.
Right.
I mean that in like thinking in a way that distracts you from the shooting. USPSA, it's about efficiency. It's about, breaking down the stage and, getting the best plan for you. Whether you have strengths or weaknesses, you can kind of tailor your stage plan around those. IDPA, it's kind of like IPSC in a way, where you run here, shoot this, run here, shoot that. It's a lot more regimented, and you have to think about other rules as far as like cover and order of engagement and that kind of thing in IDPA. So USPSA lets you, be a little bit more creative, I think.
Yeah. So when you shoot IPSC, is there things that are specific to IPSC? And actually, you just shot the Pan American Games at the Frostproof.
I did.
And obviously you shot all the nationals this year for USPSA, and then you shot the World Shoot. So between Pan American Games and World Shoot, compared to our national championships, is there anything there that you'd like to see maybe USPSA adopt?
So what IPSC does that's unique compared to USPSA is they have, I think they call it a 3-2-1 format for their stages.
Right.
So for every field course, for every one large 32 round, big field course stage, they'll have 2 medium courses, and they'll have 3 speed shoots. So there's a bigger mix of low round count and very low round count stages, in combination with, a couple of big field courses sprinkled throughout the match. So I think that format makes it way different than USPSA. In USPSA, you go to a short speed shoot stage and you tank it, and you're like, it's all right, it's only a 40-point stage. In IPSC, every stage is a 40-point stage.
Right. Yes.
So you can't think like that.
Right.
Another thing in IPSC, they're more strict as far as like their make readies and stuff. Like, there's no sight picture, there's no dry firing, that kind of thing, which I think is intended to speed up the process. Each shooter can't have a 3 or 4 minute make ready. In USPSA, there's really no limit to how long they can spend in the box, visualizing. Other than that, aside from not being able to exit the fault lines and boundaries and stuff like that in IPSC, they're pretty similar. A couple of division differences, like open is slightly different with their magazines, limited is standard in IPSC, so they're more restrictive. And then 15 rounds for production optics. Other than that, it's basically the same style of shooting.
Yeah. For me, the two difference, I actually haven't done the podcast on it because I've been so busy, but I have a list of basically the differences in the two that after shooting the Pan American Games, which was really my biggest experience with IPSC. I had shot, Puerto Rico a few years ago, and I don't know if it was really an IPSC match. It almost felt like it was a blend. Like it just the restrictions were.
With the Puerto Rico, the Caribbean Open or the Puerto
Yes.
Rico Championship or whatever they call it. I think this year it's the Caribbean Open.
Yeah.
It's a blend between USPSA and IPSC.
Are you going to that, by the way?
I am. Yep.
Okay, nice. Yeah, because is Canik sponsoring that this year, aren't they?
We are. Yep.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, that's why one of the reasons I asked if they is Canik going to jump more into the practical shooting. So I'm interested.
I mean, we've dabbled in the competition shooting world for years, and that's kind of been a driving force, along with bringing me on board with the Rival and now the steel frame Rival.
Right.
I mean, that's definitely an important aspect for us, but the competitive shooting market compared to the gun industry as a whole is pretty small. Like it's a fraction of a percent of the firearms we sell, and that it doesn't mean there's no purpose or no utility behind it, because I mean, competition shooting is a driving force for innovation.
I agree. Yeah.
Like
we have the guns in our hands the most. For
absolutely. Sure. Right. Nobody shoots more rounds than we do. Like if it's going to break, we're going to break it.
Yeah. I was just going to say, we're going to break it.
If there's a better mousetrap to be made, we're going to build it.
Right.
So I think that's a very useful aspect of practical shooting and competition shooting as a whole, is that.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's kind of where I think the separation is in my mindset. Competition shooting's everything, right? Like I'm not a big gun guy. I don't like collect guns. I don't run out and get the newest gun because it comes out. I don't buy like 14 manufacturers. I basically buy the same Caniks that I already own, like a dumbass. It's just like, I find it, I like it, I shoot it. That's what I love. Right. I don't have a safe full of different firearms. But then, when I get myself out of my little bubble, I'm like, oh, like there's like 400 different types of guns from different manufacturers, and USPSA is, so like you said, so small. So that's why I always wondered if like guys like Canik, because like SIG does, but they don't even bring a tent, right? Like they're one of our biggest sponsors in USPSA, but they don't really like show their face. It's always kind of weird to me that you would invest that much but not show your face and try to get your products in people's hands for them to try.
That is strange.
And to me, Canik is a gun that I think Canik has gotten over that hurdle thanks to people like you in a lot of ways, but it's always been known as the cheap gun. Well, cheap in this scenario doesn't mean crappy. It just means price cheap, right? If that makes sense. So
there's a difference between cheap and inexpensive.
Yes. Good point. Inexpensive would be much better. But it's like you sit there and you're like, look, if you put that in people's hands, it's instantly sold. Right. So that's why I've always wondered why we don't push more as an industry to like hands-on products. I mean, you go to a gun show, how many people buy guns because they pick it up and put it in their hands? They don't even shoot them at gun shows. They just put them in their hands and go, this feels great. I'm like, yeah, but it shoots like 6 feet to the left. I don't care. It feels good. All right, cool. It's yours. Right. I mean, so we never took that mindset to USPSA. I always thought it was kind of interesting, but again, I'm new to the sport, so maybe they have, and it just didn't work. And I don't know.
Well, I think some gun companies do. I can tell you when Canik title sponsors an event, we do go out with a booth and a tent. And like when we did the European Championships in Italy, we had a huge crew go out. We did booths, we did multiple booths, we did displays. Like you could, there were demo guns, that kind of thing. So when we sponsor a match, especially a title sponsor, we'll go out and make everything out of it.
That's pretty awesome.
So I don't know why other companies don't.
That's pretty cool. Like I said, if you put the Canik in somebody's hand versus somebody else's, I would be surprised if they didn't pick the Canik, just because of the way it feels. I mean, instantly out of the box, it just feels great. So, I mean, I don't know. I guess I'm kind of a huge fan of that gun.
I can relate. No, they've done a bunch of good with the Canik. They've listened to their customer base. So if somebody has a comment, we're not always able to, please everyone, but we do the best we can, and we definitely listen to our customers.
You got to give up on the pleasing everybody thing. It's that's an old myth. The customer is not always right. Sorry.
It can be stressful. Yeah.
Yeah. The customer is not always right.